sense,
Right.
Um, and I guess like the one thing I didn't like really put in here, the one thing I found disappointing about the book, or maybe there's a couple, but the first thing was like a combination of I found like the data representations and visualizations to be really underwhelming,
Yeah.
like just
Compared to Sprawl Ball.
and totally. And the fact that I was reading the book digitally, I think made it even worse because I couldn't like zoom in on them or
Oh, you can't?
anything. So they were like embedded really small in the iTunes or the iBook or whatever, and like so half the time I couldn't even see them. So I would like dig them out and take a picture of them, but then it was like kind of not worth it, so I stopped doing it. So anyways, I felt like that could have been maybe a little bit more time spent on that, just to make those a little bit more compelling, because he even talks about how important it is to present data in a way that is comprehensive and compelling, and it just wasn't to me. So anywho,
Okay, yeah. Well, in Kindle, you can zoom in on those. If you use spray finger spread or whatever you want to call it. Oh, you
yeah,
can't do
yeah,
that on
yeah,
you
that's
can't do that on
better.
iBooks, huh? Or whatever what the one you use.
I No, and it was so weird. And I the other problem that I had was like I think we had DM'd about it was the footnotes. Like I didn't figure out until like I was 75% of the way through the book that the footnotes were linked to the actual footnote.
Hmm.
So like I was like, where the heck are these stupid footnotes? Like there's 300 and something footnotes. And so I didn't go back and read all of them. I just read some of them. And they were fine, but it was a frustrating thing to not realize that they were linked. So anyhow, that was like user error though,
Yeah.
for the most part.
Right. Okay. Cool.
Other than that, like it was such a great book. It was a little choppy at the beginning, but I felt like by the time I got to the end, I was like, oh, okay, he was building towards this more comprehensive view of analytics and what they do on a day-to-day basis and how important they could be. And I did feel like the caveats that he sort of presents at the beginning are really important, because I think I get frustrated sometimes that like data heads think that data is all there is. You know what I mean? And there's not personality, and you know what I mean? So like somebody who does like a player projection for the draft is like, "Oh no, it's right. Like I'm 100%
Hmm.
right." Like, and it's like, "Okay, but people get hurt, people like don't figure it out, people get lost in the nightlife. Like there's
Hmm.
so many other things that happen." And I do feel like he did a good job of kind of saying that, is like data's complex. It's a tool that adds to the other stuff that we have, but it's not the end all be all. Like, so anyways, I appreciated that.
Okay. I was um I was frustrated by the first few chapters. Kind of seemed to beat a dead horse after a certain point, and trying to tell like it's uncertain. It's kind of what I would summarize it as. It's very uncertain. And it's
Yeah.
okay. Let's get to the stuff. Let's get to the knowledge here instead of just the
Yeah.
uncertainty of it all.
Yeah.
It's always uncertain, but yeah.
So I have our two threads separated, and I'll go down mine, but break in with yours, because I think, like I said, I think that we have a lot of overlap.
Okay, that'd be good because then I can just comment on what you say.
So
So
yeah, yeah. So this first part where he talks about how there's a lot of people who are locked out of basically the analytics field. It's frequently argued that the field of analytics represents yet another conduit for the traditional haves to take a greater stake in the game at the expense of the have-nots. And essentially, I mean, the field of data science is dominated by white men. As a woman, I think that's an important
hmm.
notation. Um, and I do think that there are many people who are locked out, but it's also in some way he says like, let's see here. So some would say you're adding to like more management and consultant. The addition of this new requirement serves to disadvantage people like former players. But then again, it's like everybody has their strengths and their weaknesses too. It's like not every former player is going to be a good coach. I guess what I'm trying to say is that in this day and age where analytics is such a big part of basketball, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that some former players would be inclined to learn how to use analytics and translate it in a way that they haven't before because of like where we are in this time and day, and because of like being able to automate some of the data and stuff like that too. So not every former player is like a good scout. Not every former player, like everybody is good at some things and bad at something. So I think that's a little short-sighted. And maybe it's something that like even the NBA could do as an option for players who want to go into like front office positions and stuff like that, is offer a training for people who are interested in
Yeah,
it
that'd be good.
anyways.
That'd be good. Yeah. Hey, what's up, Mr. The Mander? How do I say your new handle there? The Mander?
Another name change, huh? Man, you know what? I miss Uncle, man.
Yeah, Uncle was
I
good.
do.
Uncle
That
Daddy
one
was good.
stuck.
Yeah, Uncle was
Yeah, that
great.
one stuck. But I changed my name to Mr. Demander when after I watched that Harry Potter movie. You know that dude Scamander.
Oh, okay, got it. Yeah.
But what's up, y'all? Yeah, it's been a while. It's good to hear you guys. Good to get with you
Hey
guys and talk
man.
some hoops. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Hey, what's up, Meg?
Yeah, how you doing?
Good. I'm doing good. How you doing?
Good, good, good.
I think that, that
Yep.
that the first thing I would say is from what you said is that I think you said there was one black analytics guy head of an analytics department. I'm not sure if he's the head. I'm not sure if they're referring to him, but I think it's Shane Battier. He's also a former player. I know he's in analytics in Miami Heat. I'm not sure if he's the head of the department, but I think he might be. You could look that
Oh,
up.
see, so there you go. Yeah. So I guess what I'm saying is, okay, first of all, I appreciate that he's pointing these things out.
Okay, yeah.
But I guess like what I'm hoping is that there's more opportunity. Like being over 50 and a female, like nobody in my world ever came up to me and said, "Hey, did you know you could become a data scientist using math and pictures?" You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I would have been like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" And I think that's probably true for most like jock sort of, people who are looking to go into professional sports and stuff like that. I think like the coaching and the playing, yeah, obviously, but analytics, hopefully more so now. I guess that's what I'm saying is I hope there's more opportunity being offered to everybody to do this kind of thing because I think it's really interesting.
For sure.
Um,
For sure. That's like as I was reading the book, like um, I was kind of thinking to myself, like because I'm more of a eye. Like I go off feel. You know what I mean? Like I look and see. Like I look at the total package and I go off of instinct of what I know from the game. Like he even mentioned in the book, like you get kind of a residual knowledge of just watching the game for so long that you kind of just know what you're looking at. The professional killer. So it's like that's kind of like me, but at the same time, I do like math, and I do believe like that analytics could do. Analytics are legit. I'll just say that they are legit, but it's like I think there's certain things where it's just like the analytics is just not needed for that. Like, and that's what I found with reading this book. First of all, so I read the book like we had Meg, you had tweeted. We were like kind of talking about like Game of Thrones a little bit, and like right after that, I had bought the book, so I kind of like spent
oh
like these
yeah.
past like 2 days reading it, like
Oh
yeah, just
shit.
as a homework assignment, just try to get my homework done. But man, like I'm sorry, I just found it kind of like it wasn't the most entertaining read, honestly, and I found it to be really wordy. Like John, I know you like you had just mentioned that like there's some things I be reading and I'm just like this dude like the way he writes, it's like he just goes around and around and around and it's like what do you just say it, say whatever you're trying to say, and then like let's go from there because we're all basketball fans here, we know what's up. Like I don't know like who the audience was necessarily, like I don't know, I think he was like writing to himself, I don't even know honestly, but you guys touched on like Meg, I was like kind of get something to drink, but like I heard you, I agree with you when you were first saying like it's just a it's just a lot of words like, but I did find some like data in here because at the same time I do like math like I just said, so I found some things that I'm gonna like look back on and like use going forward, but it's like a lot of it is just like man, like please just get on with it already. Like we all like basketball. Give me some knowledge and give me some examples. Like you don't have to talk. It's like in circles so much, you know?
Yeah. And I feel like I think he kind of references it too in some ways where he says like or even when he's talking about what are analytics, like you're basically trying to develop a shorthand for what happened in an actual game, right? What already
Right.
happened. Like and so you're using the box score or you're using play by play. Like those are the two main tools to just tell the story of what happened and then glean whatever you can from that story in
Yeah.
order to like you said, I think most people who watch basketball or for me too, I watch it the way you're saying where I have my preferences of how guys play. I like certain actions, you know, that kind of thing. I don't know that everybody knows plays and all that kind of thing
Hmm.
necessarily, but
I think
you know,
very
you
few
can
do, honestly. Sorry to
yeah,
interrupt, but I
no,
think
I
very
do.
few
I
do.
think so too. Yeah. And but the analytics I think you can use to hopefully you can use it to prove or disprove something that you believe about like a certain player, right? Or about their impact. I kind of ended up going way down the RAPM pathway, which I still don't know if I was like entirely sold on that as like a metric of what impact a player has on the floor, right? And there's like all these other ones that people came up with, like LeBron and Raptor and PER, and like they're all kind of bullshit in a way to me because it's like too complicated and you're
Hmm.
trying like the regulated adjusted makes a lot of sense to me because you're trying to account for the fact that some guys play more minutes than other guys, that
Yeah.
some guys are on good teams, some guys have good teammates, you know, all of these different factors go into it. But can
Right.
you ever really get it right unless you see somebody under entirely optimal and entirely horrible conditions? You know what
Right.
I mean?
Right.
So, so yeah.
And you guys touched on it a little bit too. Like I do think this is another avenue that's it's fairly new. Like analytics is fairly new, and he even says it in the book. Like it's we're kind of just beginning to like kind of on this journey of like gathering all this data and really letting it tell the story. But it's in the beginning stages, so you can't really 100% rely on it. And I think that's why like guys like Charles Barkley and just other people like just be like, you know, them data guys. That's all that stuff is stupid and like all that. I don't think it's completely stupid, even though I kind of get what they're saying, but I think um the ideal way to look at it is you want to have like 50% instinct and like 50% of the technical knowledge, like the mathematical, like you said, Meg. Like, okay, so I love this game, and the numbers, the data is gonna tell me a story that I might have missed with my naked eye. So let me work this data enough that I understand it. So when I put my natural, you know, my eyes, what I see with my eyes together with the mathematics, then that'll just, you know, that'll take you over the top. And I do think this is an avenue that's probably going to be gate kept for a while. Um, and there does need to be people of color more people of color in these jobs because you know the players are black pretty much, and if you get people, okay, I'll just use myself an example. If I'm watching the game and if I'm a data analyst in this game, I'm probably going to be a good candidate for your team because I love watching the games like so naturally. It's so natural for me to just be passionate about this game. But if I'm in the analytics field, that's just gonna add to my like that's just gonna be great, like for the whole organization, for everybody, including myself. So it's like, and
Yeah.
and I'm able, and people like me and people of color are able to relate to the players because we're all, you know what I mean, we're all people of color. So it's like I'm that you might not have the math side, but I have you covered. And I also have you covered on like the human side because I know where you're coming from. I know we're similar in our, the way we live life. Like we're black, like, you know what I mean? Like, so there needs to be more people of color going like in these positions. And I think that teams can only help themselves if they begin to encourage that.
Well, I hope to, like, I always go back to this whole weird, like, IQ versus athleticism thing, which I at
Okay.
some other point had shared some article about that language being sort of based in, when the league actually was diversifying and becoming more black, and the language started being that the the high IQ players were the white guys and the athletic guys were the black guys. And that's
Right.
just a racist trope. That's just not true. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
athleticism and IQ sometimes are the same damn thing on the basketball court. So, I mean, you could say playmaking is IQ, right? So, anyways, yeah, I mean, to kind of build on what you are saying, I'm hoping that we're entering an era, at least getting better and better about realizing that none of these strengths or weaknesses are race based at all.
Right.
You know, even sometimes they're not gender based in my mind. And yeah, and there should be way more inclusion, not just enforcing a bunch of white nerdy dudes in at the top management levels,
Yeah.
which does happen as well. So
Absolutely.
being mindful of that is not wrong, in my opinion.
Yeah. But it's like you just said, it's like even as a woman yourself, you're like, well, dang, like I really love basketball, and you're telling me that if I know a little bit of math, and I can get a job like as a data analyst for NBA. Like, are you serious? Like, that's kind of how
Yeah,
I was feeling. I'm like, all I got to do is like understand these like some of these equations and like apply it to what I already know, and I'm good. Like, really? So
yeah.
so
I'm
like,
curious if it's like a expanding field, or if it's reached, like, I mean, there's an end to it, right? There's only so much you can know about basketball. I mean, I think he talks a lot at the end about the future of analytics and like being able to track like feel or like add audio as a data point and all that stuff, which I
yeah,
thought was really great. The audio stuff that he was talking about, I was like, yeah, that's basic, right? I mean, you always hear people talk about like, are they on a string? Are they playing together? Like, and you don't know if you don't track that audio. So, yeah, I mean, it's an interesting additional way to. I also think that for some people, for nerdy white dudes who like, I'll just put myself in that category at the moment as well. Um, I can't play basketball. I'm not going to go out there on the court and like be able to like, get a hoop with these guys or anything like that. So this is another avenue for me to be able to appreciate and love the sport. And in that sense, I think it's great,
mm-hmm.
that it's adding to the complexity and appreciation of being a fan, even if you're only doing it in a casual sense of being able to like have access to all these different numbers, all of the advanced statistics. I mean, I can't even imagine looking at these in like the 2000s. and maybe they were starting to become available, but you would never
Yeah,
like go
starting.
look up someone's PER or something like that,
Yeah, yeah.
So
This is new.
it adds to the conversation for sure, I think, surrounding players. And I mean, to go on like sort of a linear route through the book, I think when he was talking about the having a formula to be able to estimate what percentage of the salary cap players should merit was pretty fascinating because
Yeah,
I mean, you have to have some sort of rating system if you want to spend your cap wisely, right? And being able to spend your cap wisely means that you have to have good players and you want to be able to pay them what they're worth, but how do you decide what they're worth, right? So I found the whole discussion about the salary cap really interesting. Although I know that you know Rory has talked about it that way before too, which actually helped me understand this book a little better too. But for some reason, I don't know why I hadn't registered before, even though I know I've heard it and read it before, that it's 51% profit sharing. Basically, the players get 51% of the revenue. And
yeah.
that in itself is pretty fucking awesome. Um, I really wanted to build like a salary pie of the Kings, but since they had added and like make it into a GIF or something, so that you could see like what percentage everyone's getting paid right now. And I thought that would be interesting partially because we know DeMontis probably, if you go by the RAPM of this year, DeMontis is probably our best player. He's certainly not getting the top percentage of the pie. De'Aaron is, right? So I may do that at some point. The problem I was having though is that I couldn't figure out how to make the pie the right size because we've added all those non-guaranteed contracts. And I think we're paying out like $150,000 to all those little extra guys. So until they get cut, I just wasn't super comfortable with like where the data is like at this exact moment. And I don't know what I'm doing. So there's that too.
Do you talk to
Uh,
Rory about it, or who else would you talk to? I guess Rory would be the one probably the
no,
one you
I
know
mean,
best. But
it was just something I was just going to pull the data and
yeah, because
present it.
I was wondering what you would do for like the pie. Remember we talked about this. I thought of the pie would be like the what's it called, the apron, or even a little bit like you can go beyond the apron if you want to, but if you want to just re-sign your own guys, but
Yeah.
to huge deals. But yeah, the apron would probably be like the pie, and then like if they go over that, they just like have a little side thing on the side to say like they went over the apron. But yeah.
Or you could make the pie what their actual salary is, regardless of if it's in the luxury tax or not, right? And then somehow delineate like what the actual cap is, and then what the where the luxury tax starts, if that makes sense. But yeah, those
Well,
are all things I didn't quite figure out.
okay, cool. Well, that'd be cool to see that, yeah, because visual would be good, to see like how much of the cap or how much of the luxury tax cap, so to speak, your players take up. Because Fox, of course,
Yeah.
takes the most, but his contract's going to get better the longer it goes on and the longer the cap rises. His contract's going to get better because the cap's probably going to rise faster than his contract's going to rise. So it's going to
Well, and I
rise, but
know, yes. Well, and I know Rory had like a thread that was basically saying that he had a concern that we were not paying enough for wins at
right.
our current payroll, right? So, I mean, that kind of ties in to the whole mind the cap chapter in this book too, where he talks about there's like a level you can reach with your salary cap, right? But you have to be also, I mean, the other side of that, it's just not just throwing money into the wind. Like you have to pay for the skill level that is associated with each level of, like, if you have a max guy, don't give him a super max, because then you're just the Wizards, right? So and no offense to the Wizards, I love the Wizards, I love Bradley Beal, but they're just, to the same extent that the Kings have been doing it, they're just using their full cap to maintain a mediocrity because they never have a supermax guy. And to a certain extent, their max guys, or maybe our max guys, are questionable as far as what that worth is. Now, the further we get away from where De'Aaron signed his contract, the better his contract will look, I think.
But it's still going to be pretty high. It'll stay pretty high.
Yeah. So, anyways, that was concerning. It's a little concerning. And don't get me wrong, I absolutely love De'Aaron. I think he's going to have a breakout year. I think he's going to be an all-star. But looking at the data as it's presented from last year, it's concerning.
Yeah, well, I think he is probably overpaid for his production, but I'm not sure he's a max guy, max rookie extension max guy. But people said that someone else was going to give him that contract in restricted free agency, and if that's the case, you might as well not piss him off, but by not giving him his extension. But I don't know.
But John, he's that guy for the Kings, though. That's the thing. And this book kind of touched on it and it used Andrew Wiggins as an example as a number one pick.
Yeah.
He's the guy for the Kings because if you don't make him happy, he'll just go to another team or another situation that's even better than the Kings, and he'll just wreak havoc on everything. You know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, it's kind of that cap thing is kind of tricky.
Do you mean by demanding a trade? Because, of course, they could keep him with restricted free agency, but he could demand a trade, and that would kind of force their hand, essentially.
Oh man, yeah. If he demanded a trade, it's over for us. But
that's
why you want to make him happy, because you might say, oh, the data doesn't reflect his actual productivity, our actual wins, but it's like a lot of this is situational. You just have to look at what the situation is. Like another thing in the book they touched on, Carlos Boozer versus Robert Horry. It's like Robert Horry is always showing up in his role is so limited that he could just hit threes, and he plays with Kobe, he plays with Shaq, so he could just do his thing. But De'Aaron Fox is basically the leader of our team. So it's different. In Andrew Wiggins, it's he was the man in Minnesota. That didn't really pan out. He didn't really take him far. But you throw him in Golden State with Curry, with Clay, with Draymond, and he's a champion now. So it's and that's what I really agreed on with the book. It's there's certain things that the numbers can't show. As far as the situation, I was watching a No Chill podcast, and they had Vernon Maxwell on there, and he had got drafted to the Spurs at first before being traded to the Rockets, and he said that if he would have stayed with the Spurs, then he wouldn't have probably made it, because that wasn't really his style. Popovich, it didn't really fit his personality. You know what I mean? So that's something that the numbers can't really tell you. And don't get me wrong, I'll probably sound like I'm knocking the numbers a lot, but I'm really not. I love numbers. I'm a math guy at the end of the day. I love math. But it's when you're playing a game of basketball, there's a lot of things that numbers can't account for. A lot.
Yeah, I'd like to say that what you just said kind of makes it seem like, I think the numbers will be able to tell us something about that in the future.
No, absolutely.
In the next couple of decades or whatever, or next couple of years. But I feel like that kind of can apply to Keegan Murray and Jaden Ivey, both of whom went into situations in their respective teams that they're starting out with that are probably better for them, that with the example of that player you mentioned, better for them than if they landed on the other team. If Ivy was on the Kings and Murray was on the Pistons. I'm not sure. Murray on the Pistons might be okay, but Ivy on the Kings would be obviously conflicting with Fox and with Davion,
right.
And so but he's going to do well in the Pistons, and Murray's going to definitely do well in the Kings. I hadn't predicted he's going to do well, but like I hope and I believe it looks like he will do well based on the situation. He's like filling the gaping hole that we need filled. So like he's there to fill that hole. But and Ivy's like kind of, I feel like Ivy, he doesn't play defense now, but he can get good at it and like be that big point guard size guy next to shooting guard size Cade, and like Cade can distribute most of the time, and Ivy can be a secondary distributor, and like they can kind of switch roles on offense and defense. Then that'd be perfect for him too. So yeah. He looked good in the summer league. I saw him a little bit.
Yeah, can I just comment on Jaden Ivey real quick? And I agree with what you just said, John. Like basically, yeah, like where those players were chosen and where they ended up, everything it all worked out. Keegan's a good fit for us. Jaden Ivey went where he wanted to go. His mom played for Detroit. I forgot the name of the team, but the WNBA team. So, it all works out. And, maybe if Jaden Ivey did come to the Kings, then it wouldn't really pan out like that. You know what I mean? But watching Jaden Ivey play, man, I'm not even necessarily sure he's the best fit in Detroit, honestly, man. Like, Jaden Ivey, to me, let me tell you this, like, if Jaden Ivey, he's so athletic and like he's so quick, he's so fast with the ball. If I owned a team or if I was in charge of a team, I want him as my point guard. Like I'm gonna give you the ball, and I just want you to learn all the plays. I want you to get your IQ, as high as it can go. Like really, just sit down, study the game, study Chris Paul, study Steve Nash, like. Study all the greats, Jason Kidd, like study the playmakers. I think he could do that. I think he could be like an athletic, like Jason Kidd, like a super athletic, like guy. Like he doesn't even have to shoot. All he has to do is just blow by his guy and just make the right read. And I think he could be super successful at that. But I don't know if that's realistic. That's just me. That's just my opinion. Like he could just be like the most athletic playmaking machine that we ever seen. That's what I really think. I don't know if that's going to happen. And like you just said, Detroit has Cade Cunningham. He's a distributor, so that's definitely going to take the ball out of his hands. So we'll see how he ends up as a scorer. Like if he's playing off Cade, he might have to score a little bit more. But I think he could just be a straight up point guard, man, honestly.
Yeah, I'm interested to see him.
Me too.
I was never high on him. I was always a Keegan person because I watched Jaden play like 4 games in college, and like I was like De'Aaron Fox. I was like, how? To me, there was no way they could coexist on the same team. Like, to me, they were like the exact same player, So I know a lot of people that were like, oh no, he's Ja and his ceiling's so high and all of this stuff, and I was like, I don't see it. But I do think he'll be good, and I think it'll be interesting. The one thing that I think that Keegan Murray could really have is that sort of clutch gene where he talks about like, I think De'Aaron might have it too, but where your superstars, are 82 and 16 players. Like where having that supermax guy on your salary, they prove it in the playoffs, right? Or like, okay, putting it in totally different language, Charles Barkley used to say, you make your money in the regular season and you make your name in the off season, right? Make your name in the playoffs. So to me, like Keegan Murray is like that guy that gets hot in the fourth quarter, that guy that takes the first 3 quarters to figure out how he's going to get super hot. Then he gets super hot in the fourth quarter. But I also think, like, even just making the play-in, I want to see what De'Aaron Fox does in the play-in because he is that player to me, too, where his, like, I don't – it's not, like, attitude, but his skill set.
Yeah, you can't guard him.
He plays better when he feels extremely challenged, right? So if it's in a setting like that, I believe in him, even though I don't have any evidence to back that up yet. So
yeah, I agree.
Hello. Can I have a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to know about what do you guys think that the Sacramento Kings team can like how far could they go this season? Like, what do you guys think? Like,
Well, I can answer. Could they go? I can give an answer if the other guys want to think about it. But like I would say first round exit. They could do that. I don't think second round is going to happen, but I think first round could happen. I'm not sure I'm going to predict that, but
because in the past few years, it's like the team didn't perform that well, but it's like this year, like there was many changes happening to this team, right? So yeah, like the new coach, right? And they also recruit some new players like the Sabonis, right? And I just think that they may have a better record this season, win more games. I think maybe they could make it to, I would say, play-in tournaments or maybe the first round in playoffs. I would say maybe.
Yeah, so like like I said, I went really deep down the RAPM hole, or regulated, adjusted, and we greatly increased our RPM and our quote wins unquote by adding Kevin Herter, Malik Monk, essentially replacing like Buddy Hield.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Tyrese has an extremely high RAPM. His is even higher than DeMontis's. But I think like what we were just talking about, the fit was not there, right? It wasn't making other guys better necessarily. Whereas DeMontis, from what I saw from the end of last year, is not only making other guys on the team better, but if they can learn to be better cutters. And I think like part of the reason that they got Herder specifically is that he's a tremendous cutter. So like those skills that aren't necessarily like box score skills, like cutting, passing, movement on the floor. I think we got a lot better at those, and I think Mike Brown will be able to use that better. So I'm very high on what we can do, but I also think it depends on what happens with the rest of the teams in the West. If there's injuries, we have a lot better chance of like being like a 7th seed, but I'm thinking probably more like a 9th seed, and that's my guess anyway.
Yeah, I'm expecting a 500 record. I expect us to be average at worst.
that could be
500
ninth.
record. A 500 record is a playoff.
Well. Another interesting question that I want to raise, maybe you guys. Well, I want to hear your guys' opinion. Do you think the Kings will be better than Lakers this season? What do you guys think?
I think that there's going to be some moves made here. I think that Donovan Mitchell will get moved, and then I think there's other dominoes that will fall. But that's, again, like speculation.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that the Lakers will end up with a real point guard somehow, some way. It might be Mike Conley.
Okay.
So
yeah.
I don't know how much he actually adds to because.
So you guys, that rest will be traded or moved, right?
I think so. That's my guess. Yes.
Yeah, because last season, like everybody, like was holding really high expectation for Lakers, but they, ended up as with like 10th or 11th seeds, right, in the West. But I just think that this season they're not going to be better because their players were just getting older this year, and I think that the Kings is really because every season you just have no idea what will happen like in the middle of the season, and it's like I remember the first year that Julius Randle went to New York Knicks, and it's like they haven't been into the playoffs for many years, and it's like the first year, like the Randall went to the New York Knicks, and they just made it to the playoffs. And do you guys remember that?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, for sure. I don't know. I think the Lakers have a fit problem. But they also had a bad injury problem. So I don't want to like discount the
Yeah.
fact that LeBron could just come out and be God mode, and Anthony Davis could be healthy most of the year,
Mm-hmm.
and Russ can be used a little better. I actually really love
Mm-hmm.
Russell Westbrook. He's one of my favorite players. I was a
Oh,
little
okay.
offended that this book that we're talking about in here actually like kind of discounted his triple double phenomenon, because I thought that was like a
Yeah.
really fun era of basketball.
Yeah,
Um,
it's like everybody like last year,
Very
like
interesting.
everybody was just making
There's
fun
like
of
a
him,
lot
It's
of
like
there's a lot of things we could touch on, like, but I thought that one was interesting, Meg, where it's like they basically did like downplay the triple double, and they mentioned that even like though Steven Adams, he averaged like less rebounds, his rebounds were more important. I found that
yeah,
to
I
be
would say
interesting.
yeah, I would say that's a specific strategy, in Thunder. It's like once the rest got the rebound, he could just, push and make the fast break. Like, I think it's not the only reason that the rest won the data or won the stats. It's just I would say strategy, in Thunder, I would say.
yeah,
I think
that's a
what he
good
was saying,
point.
part of what he
I,
was saying, the author, is that chasing the stat kind of could lead to either good stuff or it could have unintended bad consequences of like it makes it not as relevant if you just because Russ was trying to get those rebounds. He could get the assists, he could get the points, obviously, but he was like and then he talk about how he took defensive rebounds from Adams like at the free throw line. Russ would like because of his stature on the team would get the rebounds off the free throws and stuff like that, and he would get the easy rebounds. And Adams, who's a great rebounder overall and could get tons of contested rebounds, would have a lower rebound average, but he's really one of the best in the league because Russ is getting the easy ones. And he mentions earlier in the book, like you know, contested versus uncontested rebounds. Like group teams get what was it, 80 points, 25 rebounds, and 10 assists just for showing up with NBA
yeah,
level players. So those are like everyone gets those eventually. You get those no matter what. Like so, what matters is the ones at the margins where it's harder to get them, and they gotta work to get them. So Brass was getting a lot of. I mean, it'd be fun to look at and see what his uncontested rebounds were. You could look that up, I'm sure, on NBA.com/stats. Like what were his
and
uncontested and
maybe
contested.
part of the point that Seth was trying to make, I think, too, was not that like Russ is bad or anything like that, or that or that we shouldn't like celebrate him as a star or anything like that, but more that when you're evaluating a role player like Adams, you have to look past the numbers to understand the fit of the other players that were on the floor with him with a former team, right? So he talks about that with Brooke Lopez too. Is like we need this really specific skill set, and this is where it's like very Moneyball in my mind. Is like we need this super specific skill set. You don't necessarily have to be like the prototypical NBA 3-and-D guy or anything like that. We just need you to get these specific rebounds. So we're going to go and sign Brooke Lopez because we think he can do that and fill that gap. And then it turns out to be like money in the bank. And same with Steven Adams for the Grizzlies, I think, is where he's still getting these very effective rebounds.
Mm-hmm.
And his role has actually, like, in my mind, gotten bigger because they're also using his incredibly effective passing more. They're using him more as a playmaker. And they were somehow able to see that fit, and I think it could be argued by using those kind of evaluations. Like, yeah, if Russ is the leading rebounding guard on the team, how many of those rebounds are contested? And then you can extrapolate from there backwards. Like, okay, so those were not necessarily, rebounds that Steven Adams needed to get because he was getting the contested ones, right?
Right. And I'm trying to find a stat which backs this up. like there's a lot of like interesting. I'm really gonna like go back to this book a lot and probably like reference like a lot of these like interesting stats. But like basically, that's part of the strategy of today's game. They basically give up the offensive rebounds because I think the fast break is cheaper um, than trying to than fighting to get the offensive rebound. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like
Well, like Clan said, it's more effective, like, right? Or Yang Clay, sorry. I don't know how to say your name exactly. Yeah, it's a better strategy, right?
yeah,
Is leading a fast break than I think at some point he actually like, and I don't know if I have it highlighted or not, but he actually went down and like put a number value
yeah. That's what I'm trying to find.
on like, yeah, which is pretty incredible. But I mean, along these same lines, one of the interesting things that I thought he talked about is like contract incentives, and like he talked specifically about Maurice Harkless, not on
Yeah.
the Kings,
Wow.
obviously, but like where they gave him a contract incentive to make 35% from three, but it backfired because as soon as he had 35% from three, he just stopped shooting threes for like half the season,
Yeah, so he can
which,
get over that 35.
yeah, so he can stay over 35 for the
Yeah.
$150,000 or whatever. Or like, I mean, Buddy's contract, I think, did that too, where
He was
he was
jacking up
he
threes.
just was a chucker at a certain point,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it wasn't like effective shooting, it was just shooting for, that didn't add to the fit of the team. I guess that's how it was. It's not an impact stat if you're just trying to get it to increase your personal, you know
Hmm.
profile or whatever it is.
So Russell
And
Westbrook.
mhm.
I mean, he's
um
Go ahead. Go ahead, Clay.
well, I want to ask that. Do you guys remember that last year, like at first Lakers actually wanted Buddy Hield, and then they, went to have rest. And do you think like if Lakers choose Buddy Hield instead of rest, they could be better this year? What do you guys think?
I mean,
Man, I ain't worried about no Lakers.
yeah.
Honestly. This is
I think,
Kings, baby. I ain't worried about no what they Lakers is doing.
yeah. I think you always want to surround LeBron and Davis with shooters, right? And they didn't really do
Mhm.
that, and they still haven't really done that. I mean, I don't consider Lonnie Walker like a tremendous 3-point shooter. I think Buddy could help them, if used correctly. Yeah, I do. I think if they traded, I mean, that's the other deal that's probably out there is Russ for Miles Turner and Buddy Hield, right?
I mean,
Mhm.
Um,
it doesn't matter who you put around LeBron, man. They're gonna be elevated. Like obviously, Buddy
yeah,
Hield on the Kings or Buddy Hield on the Pacers is gonna be way different than Buddy Hield on the Lakers. Beside LeBron, like his strengths are gonna be able to show. He's gonna probably shoot a higher percentage. He's gonna be you know counted on to like display a higher IQ than he has before. Like this, the responsibilities and the stakes are higher. So it's like you're gonna see a different Buddy, and if you don't, it's not gonna work.
and I think
Mhm.
we had read a previous book called Sprawl Ball where he has a whole chapter on LeBron, and he talks about LeBron. LeBron didn't become so. How did LeBron change his game to fit into the 3-point dominance of today's game? Right? He didn't become a better 3-point shooter. He became a better 3-point playmaker. So he's
Mhm.
tremendous at
Interesting.
getting other guys up because he necessitates so much attention wherever he is on the court. You cannot leave him. You have to at least single team him, sometimes double team him, and then he has like the vacuum, velocity sometimes where everybody's like, "Oh shit, it's LeBron!" Like, so he has the ability to just suck a lot of guys in, and he can see out of that a lot of the time. So
Yeah.
the more shooters he has around him, the better they're going to be in my mind. I mean, but again, it's like there's other considerations too. That's the analytics of it. What's the the actual reality of it. Are guys healthy? Are guys in the right spots? Are guys like playing the right plays? All that stuff comes into it too. Do they fit? So
I mean, the thing is, they didn't make many changes, and they lost Monk, and they got Jones, and they got Lonnie Walker, and not moving many needles, in my opinion. And the needle movers have stayed the same, and it didn't work last year. Maybe I think there were some injuries to both LeBron and AD, which doesn't help at all, which hurts. But I mean, doesn't look good for them. Can't say it looks that good for them. But I think if they want to trade Westbrook plus assets plus picks for Hield and Turner, Miles Turner, then like that would help them. I think just put Reeves at the point, and it's really LeBron at the point, and yeah, I mean that would be it'd be better for them. I think, but of course they give up their assets, but they can sign free agents in LA, not like us. They can sign someone 2 years from now to a massive contract and like off the street. We're not doing that, so different situation.
Yeah, I know I said I didn't care about the Lakers before, but yeah, I'm actively trying to campaign. I'm trying to get Austin Reeves a new nickname because he came in the game with as HBK, which stands for Hillbilly Kobe, and that's gonna be out the window. So I'm trying to nickname him Billy from White Men Can't Jump, Young Billy.
that's
Like,
awesome.
because if you look at him, it's like he just looks like a regular, little regular white kid. You know what I mean? But he is nice. He is nice with it. I love Austin Reeves. I don't think Lakers fans want a Kings fan to nickname their players, so I'm probably not gonna get no love for that.
Just like slip it into different conversations and hopefully like go into their spaces and just like say that and then leave, and then hopefully it'll just carry over.
Right. Okay, so
Well, I'm not Laker fans actually. I'm with Kings instead, I would say. Okay.
yeah, no, we love all teams, but we bleed purple and gold for sure. But okay, so I found what we was talking about in this book. I found some highlighted information that I went through, and we actually touched on these points. So basically, it says, according to the definition of contested rebounds available on NBA.com, between 55% and 60% of all rebounds off of missed field goals are uncontested defensive rebounds. So
That's crazy.
that's crazy. So it's like the game is it's basically the game is evolving, and I think that these analytics they have to catch up to the story. You know what I mean? And another on this same page, this is the stat that I personally really liked. It says, depending on league-wide pace and offensive environment, the worst team in the NBA starts every game with 80 points, 25 rebounds, and 10 assists. So even if you have all your worst players on the floor, you could book it for 80 points, at least 80 points, 25 rebounds, 10 assists. I think that was really interesting too.
Yeah, so I looked up Westbrook's first. He had a couple, right, triple-double seasons. His first in 2017-18. I googled it. That's when it was, and I guess that is what it was. His contested rebound percentage was 21.5, which is, and then his rebound chances per game was 17.6. So that's the chances he got to get a rebound. Everyone else that's high for rebound chances is way higher for contested rebounds. Like the lowest one in this ranking here is like 37.3% contested rebounds, where the rebounds were contested. Westbrook's 21.5. So he got a lot of his percentages are different, for contested rebounds. He got a lot more uncontested ones and a lot fewer contested ones, but he got a lot of chances to get those rebounds. Like the way they structured their play, like he got those chances for whatever reason, and they were uncontested, a lot of them. I can share this stat table if I want to on Twitter, and then share it in the space if you guys want to look at it. But that's it.
So let me pull us back into, well, I'm in my thread here because I was trying to sort of go in the right order, so let me keep going. So I think we pretty much covered the salary cap, but I did, again, the RAPM metric that he was using to say, I think it's important in the sense that if every team was using the exact same metric, then trades would be that much easier, right? Because if they were all using RAPM, to establish what percentage of the salary cap they want said player to take up, then it should be semi-commensurate across the board, unless you're already loaded down with stars who are taking up the much bigger contracts, right? So just throwing that out there, I also think that could be, I think I've seen people say like, oh, they could have just traded De'Aaron for DeMontis and like it would have been fine and dandy, like Indiana would have been fine with that. Like, no, go look at the RAPM, go look at the Raptor. Like, it's a totally different value model between Tyrese and De'Aaron. Like, it's just completely different. So just again throwing that out there. And then, like I said, I had gone down this huge RAPM hole. I made like a little video of what the current Kings are. It's down at the very bottom of my thread, and what the replacement players were, like the outgoing players like Dante and Buddy and the players we traded, and then the players that fell off the end of the roster, like whatever. I don't think I put Josh Jackson on there or anything, but it's interesting to see that in my mind, Monty is using some metric because both the Raptor of the guys that he signed or brought in and the RAPM of the guys that he signed and brought in are universally higher than the guys that left. So again, just throwing that out there, whether it actually, like, okay, so Raptor has this metric, which is, it's WAR, right? Win over replacement. So it's supposed to be wins over replacement players. So it's a totally different metric than the RAPM wins, which is essentially the way that they describe it. It's, so here, let me see. Let me read it. To restate Sill's description, RAPM's approach is to measure, once we consider the circumstances in which the player appears, whether his team performs better or worse with him on the floor and by how much. So RAPM is measuring the actual performance that already happened of the team and what impact that player theoretically had on that performance while adjusting for both minutes and win percentage. So it's fairly complex. Like I said, I found it really interesting. I think the idea of having a metric and having a metric that most people agree on is a fantastic one. But like looking over a bunch of them, I wasn't like 100% sold on any of them. I thought it was interesting that RAPM, even the RPM can go to -3 over 100, and that still produces a distribution of wins on the floor. So it's not.
Yeah, that was my question.
Yeah, I saw that.
So like, yeah, so like I'm trying to think. Like I think it was Buddy had a -1 RPM, but he still resulted in 6.55 wins, right? So that means that, I mean, also like now let's look at Buddy as a player. What is his best quality as a player? In my mind, it's availability, right? He does not miss games. I think he missed like 4 games in his whole time as a King. He plays a shitload of minutes. So I think that contributes a lot to that wins because he was on the floor so much. But regardless, even having a negative number resulted in a projected win share. Or I don't know exactly how to say that the right way, but a positive net impact on the team.
Yeah. See, and that's the thing that, again, like I really am not bashing, but that's the thing where it's like you have to go off of what you see, because it sounds like to me reading this book that, the technology is fairly new and a lot of basketball has been played up to this point. So it's kind of like the analytics have to catch up to the story of what's going on right now. And this book did do good. It did do a good job of, telling you like where we're at at this point in time in the NBA game, which is perimeter play, point guard play,
Yeah.
not turning the ball over, 3-point shooting. Big man is obsolete. Like that's where we're at. So we're gonna continue from this point on, and then we have to let the analytics kind of tell a story in a way that makes sense with the numbers and what we're seeing. So what you were just saying, Meg, it's like I highlighted this in here. It says an RAPM model might suggest that Nick Collison was enormously impactful for the Oklahoma City during the Westbrook and Durant years. Unfortunately, that model couldn't do much more than say Nick Collison, he's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's
That's a
like,
great one.
yeah, so it's like, and I remember watching that team, right? And they're basically saying, yeah, there's no way to. Nick Collison is not no all-star guy, but when you put him on the floor, he's really effective for that team with Westbrook and Durant on the floor, and that's something that your eyes can see. Like, and that's something that Durant and Westbrook would agree with. They're like, yeah, man, when Nick Collison is out there, we could trust him. He plays his role. He plays
He's
off
in the
of us.
right
We have
spot.
chemistry.
Yeah.
He knows what he's doing out there. He's playing defense. So it's like things like that. That is like the numbers have to
Well,
catch up
one of
to.
the RAPMs that really surprised me that I like had to really dig for was Sam Merrill's, which is and he had like a tremendously high RAPM. However, he played like 12 minutes or something. So it doesn't reflect in that impact win number, but his RPM number was like so it to me you look at a guy like that who has an RPM and you can say like I mean I think it cuts either way, right? If you have a very limited sample size, it can get way better, it can get way worse. But if someone has a surprisingly high, let's see, I'm trying to dig in and find it on here. A surprisingly high one, why not take the risk of giving him more minutes? You know what I mean? And seeing if it stays so effective. Let's see here. My video is too slow. I mean, Casey Okpala had a very low one, by the way, but also had extremely limited minutes. So it's a little, yeah. So Sam Merrill's was, again, Sam Merrill's was like almost exactly the same as Buddy's. So can you get somebody who's a complete budget player like that to give you a similar impact for way cheaper, right?
Yeah.
You know, or I mean, even if you just need him to step in and fill minutes, having a backup buddy is probably better than, having whatever. I don't know what Quinn
Yeah.
Cook's RPM
Alternative.
was, but yeah, but numbers wise, he's a good bet, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. So if like
Especially if
you're,
you can get him for a minimum.
yeah. So like if you're the Lakers, and you have this team right now, and you could get Buddy to play, like a bench role, like you just said, that could be extremely, beneficial for them.
Yeah.
Like count on him to play his role. He doesn't have to go outside of himself like he would in Sacramento. He wouldn't have to go outside of himself like in Indiana. Like he's built to play that role, that specific role where he doesn't have to have that many responsibilities and he doesn't have to worry about anything else besides what he does best.
Um, so let's see here. So I mean, that's probably we should wrap it up on RAPM. It's kind of a rabbit hole to go down, but
I'm
it
re-
was interesting. Oh, go
I'm
ahead.
reading I'm reading an article right now as the space is going on from basketballstat.home.blog about RAPM and how to calculate it. You'd use a linear regression. I don't think he got into calculating it. Seth Partnow did in the book, did he? He kind of like said it's too much math and blah blah blah, right? Or did he talk about how?
Yeah. Well, he
So yes,
gives he gives this. He gives net points equals impact times playing time. But I believe this is like to get to impact, I think is really complex,
Yeah.
is my understanding, because that's where you have to like figure out, you use the box score and the minutes and the win percentage and all that stuff. Although I could be wrong. Maybe that's what you've hit on there.
yeah. Well, I don't know how to do a linear regression, but I can learn and just to learn just for the specific instance. And like you look at all the plus minuses of all the players on the court for their various times, and yeah, I don't know. I could try to figure it out, but it'd be interesting to know. But what you kind of said, what I wanted to say is that figuring out the RAPM doesn't really tell you why that is the case. That's what Uncle was saying. I think is like when you figure out RAPM and this person has a high RPM like Nick Collison, if you're just a math guy who likes to cheer for his team but is also a math guy, you don't really know why Nick is doing that, helping them out so much. You just know that he probably is based on the adjusted plus minus, right? So,
yeah, and I think it's important to take into consideration that this data is all based on events that have already happened, right? So if you're using it to project fit or performance, for the next team or the next year, it may or may not work out to the same kind of advantage. Obviously, that's again, where the great value of having these consistent players, like Paul George. Is Paul George a good bet on a max contract? You know what I mean? You could go back and look over all of that data and say, well, yeah, obviously, what, I don't know. So
yeah, there's a lot of interesting things in this book. I'm really I'm going through things that I highlighted. It's a lot of good data. Let me see this one. It's, we can't assume every. So yeah, like we were just saying, an average NBA player producing at plus 0 out of 100 rate is still really valuable. Only 200, only 248 of the 529 players who appeared in the 2018-19 had an RPM exceeding 0. So 249 to 400 still brought far more to the table than the best G leaguer was likely to do. So that's why they set it at 0, is because see, and that's kind of all right. So all these guys are really good. Let's go from there.
Yeah. Right. I have watched, what it's called, the Old Fashioned 3 with Jerry Reynolds, and it has Jerry Reynolds and Phantom and oh God, I'm forgetting the host's name. That guy who, but that that's Jerry Lyddix. He's like, oh, I loved Eddie Johnson. Eddie Jordan. He always made 2 more points than he let happen on the other side of the floor. And that's basically analytics, right? Can you get are you more valuable than you are detriment?
Right.
Which is, I mean, you can get into all the deep math and all that stuff too, which is also fun, I think. But in the very end, if all of your guys made 2 more points than they let happen on the other side of the floor, you'd still win the game, right? So, we can make this super fucking complex, or look at it through those eyes of just be better than the guy that you're playing against, and sometimes that's hard.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I got to leave pretty soon, like at 7:20 or so. So I wanted to bring up something. I don't know if it's next in line with the book, but I highlighted and put in my thread playmaking usage, because I know, because I looked it up, that regular usage is field goals, free throw attempts, turnovers, and minutes played. It's a super complicated equation. Not super complicated, but you can screw it up easily. But that's the inputs. Those are the inputs. Team minute played, your minute played, and for the player, and field goal attempts, free throw attempts, and turnovers. So assists are not in there, and so there's no real usage. Doesn't tell you about playmaking or assists, at least. I mean, tells you about making an offensive play, but it doesn't tell you about making a play for others. So I don't know what page it's on. It's in the Kindle. It's in I think it's right after the rebounding one, or maybe it's in, I don't know where it is. Sorry, but playmaking usage, potential assists plus free throw assists divided by the team offensive chances. So I just understood what it meant. I didn't know what it meant until now when I was reading it again. So it's showing potential assists are anytime an offensive player, after getting the ball, took a shot within 1 or 2 steps, I think is what it is, 1 or 2 dribbles or whatever the hell it is. It's something like that. And either goes in or it doesn't. Either way, you get a potential assist for that. The person who passed it to him. Plus free throw assists. I think that's like when someone shoots a foul after getting the ball from pass, shoots and gets fouled. The free throw assist comes to that because that takes away the field goal attempt, right? So you don't get that potential assist, but you do get the free throw assist, either generated or like the potential free throw assist is theoretically, you know what I'm saying? So you divide all those together by the team offensive chances when there was like a chance for the team to do something on offense, and that gives you playmaking usage, like a percent. That'll give you a percentage less than 1, like whatever, 50, 30, 20, 10, and percent. And yeah, that's pretty cool. That's awesome, actually. I love that. I
So
can use
I
that
think,
on
and
my own.
didn't that come up in our last space too? I think someone was mentioning like, oh, they should count assists, chances as well as like assists landed, because you're always like relying on the other guy to make the shot, right? But I'm curious, like, I love that, and I'm interested, like, because DeMontis sets so many screens, and so many of them turn out to be screen assists, but he sets multiple screens and picks in like a single possession,
Yeah.
a single trip down the floor. So I'm wondering if he's getting playmaking credit if those lead to a made basket, I guess.
Well, you can see his screen assist, but I'm not sure if you can see his potential screen assist on NBA stats. I'm sure the teams have that data, but yeah.
You know what I think they should seriously do, and this is on subject. They should count this, and I think Jeff Van Gundy, I think he brought this up like during a broadcast. Like I remember hearing him say it. They should count the assist if the player who got fouled on the shot makes one or both free throws. They should do that.
Yeah,
I think that
that's
would be dope.
interesting.
I think that's what this what would you call it? Like
turnover percentage or like
no, it's the free throw assist that I mentioned. I think that's in
oh
the
yeah,
book. I think
it's
that's
like that. But...
I think that's an obscure stat. No one references free throw assists, right? But like,
yeah,
I think that's what he's talking about in the book. Is what Partnow's talking about, is that kind of idea,
Yeah.
I feel like it should be free throw potential assists, because if they miss both free throws because they're a bad free throw shooter, I mean, you still got the potential that they could have made them, from the pass. So yeah.
But I think that would be really interesting. And since you're leaving, John, we gotta do this again because this book has so much like interesting stuff that we could talk about. But so basically, the question I'm gonna ask is where are we going next? Where does the game go from here? And this part of the book I found super interesting. That will kind of give us a little preview to the future, and it's about defense. So basically, it's saying that what I got out of it is playing defense is impossible, basically, since there's no hand checking. Players are so good at shooting, and it's like you can't like use your hands to guide or anything. So it says this is super interesting to me, like probably one of the most. Like it says, since tracking data estimates player position by center mass, these distances are chest to chest rather than how contesting hand is far from the jumper at the point of release. A defender with an NBA wingspan is arm's length from a shooter at right about 4 feet of separation. So it says accuracy gradually increases with the distance of the closest defender until the shooter has about 10 feet of room, after which point they're all basically warm-up jumpers, which the league as a whole makes around 41% of the time during game action. So I think that it's, like I just said, I think that they're basically saying defense is impossible. So I think the next like kind of evolution of the game, because I do agree that the game is really in a great probably has ever been. They might have to bring hand checking back, or they might have to bring some kind of thing back that gives defense an advantage, because they're basically saying like even if your hand is in like the shooter defender space, and we see this all the time, they're still probably gonna make the shot. And it's like you can't use your hands, and it's like you can only, and if you can only like reach out your arm like chest to chest and reach up and your arm is like contested and not fouling, they still make the shot. Like these guys are so good. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I was like, for me, I go like watching the playoffs this year. To me, I just kept keying in on Robert Williams III. Like he was the difference in every series he was in, but he could play such limited minutes because his foot was jacked. Um, but I think Herb Jones had a similar impact on the floor for the Pelicans too. Where I know people were talking about Herb Jones, like he's so great that you found him in the lower part of the draft and all this stuff. But he has that. Robert Williams has this really incredible way that he can use vertical space when he closes out on guys, and he's mostly successful closing out without failing on defense. That was one of the things that he said in here that I thought was really cogent was if you foul the shooter, you failed, right? That's bad defense. If you no matter how hard you played, whatever the effort level was, all of that stuff, you foul the shooter and you give up the 3 points, especially, or 2 points, or whatever it is, that's a failure on defense, right? So to me, the future is, and what I find so exciting about guys like Chet is the ability to play post and perimeter defense in a matter of steps, and with good length. Like the one of the games that I think both John and I watched at the crossover pro-am, Chet blocked a 3-point shot, but he blocked it before it even started arcing up towards the basket. It was like the most incredible play that I've seen in a pro-am ever, because nobody plays defense at pro-ams, etc. But Chet does that all the time. So I think that's where defense is headed. But then in this book, what kind of gave me some pause too is he talks a lot about how defensive skill sets can be become outdated really easily by exactly what you said, rule changes, right? Is like they can change a single rule and essentially the big man's gone, or George Mikan is obsolete, or whatever it is. So I think it's a fascinating. I want to watch, I guess, is what I'm going to say. Is like I don't know exactly what the future is. I think part of it is defense. I may think that because that's my favorite thing to watch, and it was like what my favorite player did last year. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the stuff that he says about defense in here was stuff that a lot of people talk about. Like they talk about like that defense isn't as valuable as offense. And I had never thought about it in the way that it can be altered so drastically by rule changes, or by that failure of making a successful, alteration to the shot, a successful stop, a successful, or successfully turning somebody over.
Yeah, it was basically saying that the ideal defensive outcome is no shot at all. So it's
Yeah.
what you just said. It's like with players like Chet, that's why we need him healthy and we need him in the league, because he could help change. He could help move the game forward. And it even touched on in this book that in the Jordan era back in like the 90s, how like the rule changes again, like the illegal defense, like every defensive player had to be on a man. You couldn't sag off, and you couldn't help in the post until the post player had the ball. So when the post player
Well, and
caught
I
the
didn't.
ball, you couldn't double
Yeah.
it until they caught it, or else it would be
I
like
did not know that you could only play man on defense. I didn't know that there was no zone
there was
defense.
no
I didn't
zone.
know
Yeah,
that. I think that was
yeah,
like 2004 or something that he said that got changed. And that is basically the pace and space game that we are seeing today, right? Is the drop coverages, the I mean, defense changed completely just because they said, no, you no longer have to guard every single guy on the court. You can do whatever you want.
yeah.
It made stretch fours, stretch bigs really important
Yeah.
because now you still have to guard those guys, whereas normal old school bigs, you don't have to guard them if they're on the 3-point line, and with the zones
Yeah.
availability, So yeah.
So let me just, since we are probably really short on time at this point, I did look up. So when he was talking about how like analytics are applied in real time, like in a front office, and was like going over the calendar and like talking about how there's guys who present it to the rest of the team and all that stuff. I found that to be like the most compelling part of the book, partially because what I love about data is how it can be visually, represented in a way that people can have a breakthrough that they may not have otherwise had. So I did look up the coaching staff for the Kings, and we have added Robbie Lemons, who begins his seventh season as the Kings of the first senior director, analytics and strategy. In this role, Lemons will serve on the coaching staff, providing analytical insights and strategy to Coach Brown and his staff. He will also support the front office during the off-season free agency and draft periods. Prior to this role, Lemons worked in the front office as a pro scout, college scout, supported basketball admin. So I believe that is our analytics liaison with the front office. I also looked up who our front office staff is, and I am concerned that there are not more analysts named. I know that Wes and Monty are both analytics guys, but I don't know how many actual numbers they themselves crunch. I would feel a little bit happier if I saw a more built out, like 1 to 2 more people that are, doing analytics, but that could also be falling on like the film guys and stuff too.
Right.
So I just wanted to throw that in there. I'm trying to think of what other. Yeah, I mean that was I loved how he talked about how being able to present, all these numbers in a timely fashion, like when people need them, like for the draft. Like obviously, if you have some model that's going to run out past like your scouting period or something, that's totally useless, right? Like you really need to be on time, with your data, like when it's actually needed so that you can have some input, because otherwise you'll just get overlooked. And then, like I said, the idea of somebody on the coaching bench, like being able to, in real time, give guys ideas about, what is analytically valuable about their own performances and what they can do better as a team, I think could be really helpful for this team. Like, I feel like we could have won 5 or 6 more games just by starting Mo, or
Yeah.
like just by doing simple, dumb stuff that the numbers said were the right thing to do,
Right. Exactly. I agree with that 100%. And I think mixing the analytics with a sort of like a disciplinary kind of system will help our team a lot. Like somebody there, like you just said, to like remind them, like, hey, you have this matchup tonight. Don't forget that, 75% of the time he's going to go left. And if he goes right, he's
Yeah.
going to pass it to the corner 65% of the time. So be ready for that. Like that stuff right there, that to me is what useful, is what would be super useful in my eyes. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
just keep on reinforcing that, because yeah, that stuff is legit for sure.
Yeah. And it's true. Like, I think like again, like going back, I like translate everything into like Jerry talking in my mind, but like going back to that podcast that they do, he said, half the time in the huddles, guys don't hear what you say anyways. Like their
Oh yeah.
brain is in the game. You know what I mean? It's sort of like I always hate they pull guys aside at the end of the game and like give them this long ass like interview. It's like this dude's just been playing like his heart out for like 36 minutes, like, and you expect him to have some like totally informed, like awesome answer about plays or whatever. But having said all that, what Jerry said is what he would usually do in his huddles is he would say something and then he would like give it a minute and then he would say it again, so that he was hoping it would like hit the hardest it possibly could. And I bet that Mike and Jordy have tactics like that. That's what I'm hoping, where they shit can land. You know what I mean? So yeah, I mean, I'm excited. If I were gonna like totally crunch all our numbers and like say what the Kings were going to be this season without looking at any of the other teams in the West, I would feel a lot higher. Like I'd have them at like 45 wins. But
Yeah.
I don't know, I think a lot of the teams without injuries are probably better. So that's my only hesitation in being like the full optimist.
Yeah, that's why I say I expect us to be average at worst. And that's like my hope.
Don't you think
Because
that's a win for us though,
yeah,
even
it
if
is
we
a
were a
win for
500
sure.
team?
Yeah, yeah, it's a win. It's a win. Um, and we got guys. A lot of our guys are mid 20s. Late 20s. So it's like, is the injury bug really gonna be a problem like that? I don't know, because our team is
Yeah.
relatively young. We're fresh. Our key guys are young. You know what I mean? So it's like we have a lot of positive things to look forward to, but we're so unsure. And it would be, if we had more math, like you're saying, we could feel a little bit better. Where we're going, because we
Well, and
do. Go
that
ahead.
that whole chapter in here that he goes into the 82 and 16 game players, like where I think we talked about earlier too with like
Right,
Robert Ory and
Robert
like
Orr. Yeah.
who are these great role players who are stepping into who've been maybe riding the bench more so than usual. I mean, the Warriors did it last year too, like playing the young guys
Hmm.
out in front in a lot of like the season, the game day games. But then once you get to the playoffs, no, you're playing Clay. You know what I mean? No, you're playing like there's only so many minutes and you got to play your guys that we don't even know well, I guess we got rid of a lot of our guys at this point, but we don't know for De'Aaron. Like I feel like we need to establish that data. Like, is he a good playoffs player? So I just, uh, you know,
And
we
then
need to get there.
another thing that I found interesting is, like, if you have, say you have a good team, and you expect to make the playoffs, and you do make the playoffs every year, but you keep coming up like short of a finals maybe appearance or a win. There, it basically says that in order to win, if you're at that level, you have to bring in a player who is basically, like a really good player, like at the end of his career, or like undervalued. Um, I'll just give you like an example, like when the Bulls brought in like Dennis Rodman,
Yeah.
or like when the Pistons brought in, I forgot his name. When the Bad Boy Pistons, they traded,
Oh my
what's his name?
God. Ah, you're gonna kill me with this one because he's my favorite player, Rasheed Wallace. Rasheed Wallace.
Oh well, I was talking about the Bad Boy Pistons. The
Oh,
Isaiah. So they
oh,
traded for like
right.
an all-star player because he was undervalued. But I'm basically saying that you have to get lucky enough to get that type of player, because he's gonna be worth those extra like 3 or 4 wins that are gonna take you over the top if you're like,
Yeah,
if you can't get over that hump. So like
yeah.
this book, man, it tells like a really interesting story. Um, you kind of are. I kind of already had a slight idea about it, but to like lay it out like this is like, it makes sense. A lot of it does make sense.
I think it's interesting. Like, so, okay, the first one we read was Sprawl Ball, which was an analytics book, and then we read the
Mm.
Reynolds Remembers, and then we read this one. But for me, they're kind of like building on each other and working together to like further my full understanding. And there's parts that I've been going back to of each of them,
Yeah,
of like, hey, like I want to like kind of revisit that and think about that a little bit more. And it's a nice break to like be looking at numbers and stuff, instead of just being like, oh, is KD gonna get traded, or like whatever dumb off-season narratives they are not really my bag.
yeah.
So anyways, it's really fun to do this in my opinion. So I guess we'll shut her down, and our next book that we're reading for next month is the Kochi book. It's called The Smart Take from the Strong. So it's more of like a storybook. It's not analytics, but if
Mhm.
you're interested, the more the merrier.
Okay, yeah,
Uh,
for sure.
and then we'll probably do another analytics one after this. I think we'll do there's like a hoop intellect one that I think is by Ben Harper, that, but anyways, yeah, I'll I'll throw a link of it up, and you can check it out too.
Yeah,
For
like
our
the thing
next
though with these analytics books is like, man, like I just need them to get straight to the point. Like I don't need like all this, like all that jazz. Like, give me the numbers, give me a real life
Yeah.
example, and then like kind of explain a little bit. Like, I just found a lot of extra like unnecessary words. I don't know if it's just me. Like, there's a lot of unnecessary words in this book. Like,
Well, and a part, like, I don't think you were here at the very beginning, but so the Sprawl Ball, the first one that we read, the visualizations and the graphics and the illustrations in the book were extremely, like, they were beautiful, they were clear, they were easy to understand, they were really illustrative. And I just didn't find that the same way here. So, like, a lot of the charts and stuff weren't helping my understanding.
yeah,
So,
I couldn't even see it because I like you can't really. I'm on my iPad, so you can't really like zoom in on
same.
the chart. Yeah,
Yeah, and which is really annoying. I hope they fix that. I actually was gonna, like, I don't know, put a bug report into iBooks or whatever, because John said in the Kindle he could, like, make them bigger so he could actually read them. So, but the few times I, like, took a picture of it and made it big enough, it wasn't totally worth it. So I didn't keep doing that. But anyways,
yeah,
yeah, it's just an interesting way to add to the, allure of basketball, I guess, and, like, appreciate it more, hopefully, have a little bit, like, more understanding of it, or also just understanding, like, how a front office works. Like, that part was really interesting to me,
that
where he
was
went through sort of like the yearly calendar of, like, because I think we always are, like, caught in these cycles of, like, hot takes where we're like, well, why don't they just do this? And it's like, well,
yeah,
they're working this, like, intense fucking calendar, like, all year. Like, half the time they don't even practice before the next game. So anyways, I
yeah.
found that also interesting.
That part was really interesting. Yeah, this book, like overall, this book helped me see like a picture in my mind, like see where the game is at currently in time. That's what it helped
Yeah.
me most. Like, so like we're here now and it's gonna keep going and we're gonna have certain changes. Players are gonna be different, strategies will change. So like it helped me see like what's going on. Because we came from the no big man to like wing players to point guards. Like they talked about like Steve Nash versus Jeremy Lin, like all that kind of type of
Yeah.
stuff. So it's like, so yeah, all that stuff was interesting.
Well, awesome, man. It's great to have you in here.
Yeah, good talking
Uh,
to you, man. This was
yeah.
fun.
Yeah, totally.
We could probably talk
Um,
about this book for like hours.
right? I know. Totally. All right, I got a jam, and but yeah, enjoyable times. Hopefully you'll be interested in the next one too, and we'll see each other then.
Okay, cool. All right, I'll talk to you later then.
See ya.
All right.